Hi folks, it's Andy and welcome to this week's Kendo Rant. Okay, here we are for another week of questions. This is not a makeup tutorial or a TikTok video or anything like that. I am in my partially constructed studio at home, so it's still a little bit echoey, so apologies for the sound if it's a little bit echoey. I'm using a sort of miniature ring light to make it bright enough to be able to film. So yeah, that's why it looks like this. But I don't think you want to take makeup tips from me, let's put it that way. But we've got a load of great questions for you this week. Just a note on this though, like I say, I am constructing the studio still here so that I can bring videos to you more often, more frequently. But it is sort of an ongoing process, so I'm going to be fixing the sound and stuff over the coming weeks. There might be times as well where you can hear construction and stuff going on in the background. So yeah, just forgive me for that, okay? And I'm still getting used to the setup and stuff, and whether I'm getting the camera right, the lights right, the sound right, and all that sort of thing. So yeah, just be patient with me, okay? So before we jump into these questions, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. You know all the YouTube stuff, but most importantly, you need to be shopping at the best Kendo equipment store in the known universe, KendoStar.com. Obviously, I would say that it was my Kendo shop. So I would say that, right? But everyone knows it's the best place. So get to KendoStar.com. And that supports the channel, keeps the camera rolling, keeps the sound getting better. And yeah, just do that. Right, let's get on to this. Okay, so all the time, interesting to listen. I feel in comfort when you mention progress, keiko, shiai, and grading. Where are the Kendo no kata? That could help, I think, but maybe kata underestimated, maybe. Hope so, because why are we doing them? So this is in response, obviously, to last week's video when I talked about what I consider to be maybe the, what I kind of talk of as the sort of 3 pillars of Kendo that sort of prop up your progress. That being your keiko, your actual practice, your shiai. You must do shiai if you want to progress, and you must do gradings if you want to progress, right? These things are really important if you want to continue to progress in Kendo. And I did say last week that there's another tiny little pillar, or maybe it's even a gargoyle on the roof or whatever, that is Kendo kata. I'm sorry, this might upset a lot of you, but Kendo kata does not impact your improvement in Kendo as much as the other 3 do. All right, it just doesn't. It's there for its specific reasons. It definitely has its benefits. It does have its benefits. And before you go taking me out of context like some of you did last week, where you made it out like I'd said that Kendo kata has no benefit, didn't say that. I said that the actual waza that we do in Kendo kata aren't the same as the ones we do in Shinai Kendo. I didn't say you can't use there's no application of Kendo kata in Shinai Kendo, because there is. But the thing about Kendo kata is you're not going to like this. It doesn't start to become really relevant to your improvement in Kendo until much later on. And I'm talking probably like maybe 5th dan, but I'm sort of touching on it at 6th dan, where it's starting to get more relevant. So yeah, I'm not saying don't practice it. I'm not saying you're wasting your time doing it, and there's nothing to be gained. There is, but don't pretend that practicing the kata is the same as doing kirikaishi for the benefit of your Kendo, because it's just not, okay? So, sorry. I know that some of us like to do the keiko that's not as tiring, or that lets us feel like we're closer to being samurai. It's holding wooden swords instead of doing actual combat. But yeah, it's important. Kendo kata is important. but it doesn't form the basis of your kendo like the other three do. All right, so you do need to practice it, but it's wrong to say it's as equally as important as the others. So yeah. Flame me. Go on. Right, next. I'd love to submit a question if possible. Yeah, that's what we're here for. How do you deal with physically aggressive kendo players in matches and in standard keiko? I can deal with Shinai aggressiveness and kind of get it when they want to win, but punches and pushes to the ski area or just plain old punch to the mask and then a push on the side of my head, I'm not a massive fan of. I'm completely capable of meeting their tayatari and push back, but it's not the kendo I enjoy. I'd rather do cleaner kendo than that. Do you have any advice? Okay, that's a good question. I'm going to be mean and pick up on your spelling here because this sort of thing triggers me. It's tayatari. Okay. Anyway, it's a tough one that I think a lot of people struggle with. No doubt about it. Now, it's difficult for me to tell you exactly how to deal with that through this medium of kendo RANT because I can't show you right now. But the key to it is ashi sabaki, okay, ashi sabaki and tai sabaki. So movement of your feet and movement of your body. What you have to do is with players like that, they're actually quite easy to deal with. But if you don't know quite the ways how to do it, it can be very, very difficult. So this is something I've been working on with my eldest daughter. She's 14 at the minute and she's obviously quite slender. She's, not super stacked, but she's having to do practice with adults and sometimes they can get a little bit sort of physical. And even when she does Shinai in the UK where we're based right now, the Shinai is essentially at her age it's mixed. It's boys and girls together. So some of the boys are much bigger than her, got much more power than her as well. So I've been dealing this with her as well. Essentially, what you have to do is you have to use their power against them. So as they come to push you this way, don't try to push back with them because you can't win that battle. All right, you can't win that one. What you have to do is that instead you have to use your tai sabaki or ashi sabaki to move. Okay, as they come forward, but you can't don't try and do it randomly or they'll just chase you. What you want to try and do is as they wait for them to sort of push forward. It's at the moment that they're pushing forward, that's when you need to move using your footwork to the side, okay? To the side this way so that they slip through that way, okay? So they're pushing against you like this, and if you push back, it's just going to be like this. But if you move to the side like that, that's what happens, okay? And you have to turn your body as you do it. Don't move just to the right. Turn, okay? Turn this way. So this way, and you keep facing them, they'll fall that way, and you've got the chance of hikiwaza as well. So it's definitely doable. Definitely something that you should practice. You can even use your Shinai a little bit. In fact, it's quite useful too. What you can do is once you're here, once they start pushing you, if you want to move your right foot out to the right this way, and you can momentarily, you can place the Shinai on the side of their men here this way. As they push forward, if you turn this way and push on this side of the side of their men there, it'll be quite unpleasant for them and they might think twice about doing it again. Because what they're going to do is they're going to go like this, and then as they fall, you're going to put pressure here and they're going to go sort of this way. They're really going to fall over. Not fall over, but they're really going to sort of break their posture. It's called kuzushi, that kind of movement, all right? It's legit, it's fair, it's fair game. You're allowed to do it. Because I'm talking momentarily, right? So if you use that sort of technique, you can sort of this way, give them a bit of a push, help them go around this way, and what they'll do is they'll stumble this way and they'll look round at you straight away because they're like, whoa, where did you go? Yeah? And that's when you give them that hikimen. All right, so you've got to get your footwork nice and sharp, and yeah, I think that will be a good little move for you. All right, so give it a try. Next one, hi Andy. I was introduced to the term datotsu no koki when doing kendo kata some time ago. When trying to research it, I can find datotsu no kikai. Are the terms one and the same, or are the concepts and the meaning slightly different? Thanks. Okay, so the reason I gave a little side laugh there is obviously just because you said you learned it from, you came with it from the kata. But anyway, it's a more relevant concept for Shinai Kendo, frankly. But anyway, it's not that it's not relevant in the kata. Anyway, I'm sick of talking about kata. So you've got 2 words here. Let me get my computer into Japanese. Just a minute. There we go. So this one, koki and kikai. Okay. So I don't think that's not the right kikai. That means machine. Kikai. Okay. So what you've got is look, for all intents and purposes, to shorten this, the short answer, for all intents and purposes, it's the same thing. It's just 2 words for the same thing, right? It's like saying dark blue and navy blue, like it's, or great and fantastic. For all intents and purposes, it's the same thing. All right. I'm pretty sure the Zen Kenden's wording is usually datotsu no kikai. But if we're going to go into it a little bit more, if you can see that this kanji and this kanji, which is the ki, is the same. This means opportunity. Okay, this means opportunity. And from koki, from the core from koki is like good. All right, so it means good opportunity. Okay, and then kikai, the kai is like meet together. So if you were really going to be strict, this means good opportunity, and this just means opportunity. Okay. So yeah, that's that. Okay. So, but for all intents and purposes, the usage of these words is, especially in a kendo sense, is the same. All right. I don't hear datotsu no koki that much. I've almost exclusively heard datotsu no kikai. Anyway, right, next one. Hi Sensei, how long do men himo generally last? I've had mine for approximately 2 years, and recently it seems to loosen off rather regularly despite tightening it on numerous occasions during keiko. Is it time for a new KS men himo? Sorry for the how long is a piece of string question. Quite literally. Look, pair of men himo, that is a how long is a piece of string question, because it depends, right? It depends on you. That's like saying how long do the batteries last in my television remote control? Well, depends how often you watch TV and change the channels, isn't it? So it's kind of a bit like that in this case. It wouldn't surprise me if after a couple of years, especially if you're only using one men, if you're rotating out like between 2 or 3 men's, then they'll last longer, of course. But if you're just using one men, 2 years is probably a sort of time where they're starting to rough up. I've never heard it where, to be honest, it's the himo's fault that your men's getting loose. It's not impossible. It's not impossible. So if you're sure it's not the way you're tying it, you're not tying it in a different way, then by all means give another set of men himo a try. And especially if they're looking a little bit battered or tattered, it's worth doing anyway, isn't it? Next one, hi Sensei, can you talk about the differences in Shiai as you move up the ranks? As Kendoka get higher ranks, they tend to get older, so they are more likely past their physical prime. In higher level Shiai, what changes as the body ages? How do these higher level Kendoka compete against younger, physically stronger Kendoka? Many thanks as always for your time. Okay, so that's a really good question. It's a really great question, actually, because of course it's true that you have to wait a certain amount of time between your grades. So as you're climbing up the grading ladder, you're also aging at the same time, right? So your ability starts here. When I'm saying ability, let's say your grade, your rank, so your technical proficiency starts here, and your physical ability starts here. Let's say when you're like 6 or 7, like you've got all the energy in the world, right? And then like it kind of goes like this, doesn't it? And it kind of crosses over. And this point where it crosses, where it intersects, that's obviously like the sweet spot. Now that area is obviously different for everybody, depending on their circumstances. Thank you. Siri trying to get involved there. That is obviously different for everybody. Okay, it's different for everybody. So here's the thing. That is like at top level kendo in Japan, for example. If we put it in like the ideal situation where, you know, kendo is at its sort of peak, then that's like your all Japan level players. So those players tend to be between, let's say, 18, especially for women, and through to maybe 40. All right. There's very few that are pushing 40 though that are still playing at all Japan level, but there are a few. And then obviously there are third dan to sixth or even seventh dan, occasionally seventh dan. All right. So there's quite a broad spectrum within there. All right. But you tend to find that the highest concentration of the most successful Shinai players overall are in the sort of late 20s, early 30s, and they're around 5th dan or 6th dan. All right. So those players are the ones who are. With women, it could be a bit earlier. They could be a little. They tend to break through a little bit earlier than women. That's why you see a lot of high school girls in the All Japan Championship. Actually, having said that, high school boys aren't allowed in the All Japan Championships, but high school girls are. So, and I think it's a population issue that. But even so, if you think about the top level female players, they tend to be in the sort of mid to early 20s and sort of 4th or 5th dan. It's not always the case. They go, you know, some of them go up into their sort of late 30s as well. Now, once you sort of beyond that bracket, so I'm sort of like age-wise and grade-wise, I'm still in that sort of bracket, but I'm in a different situation to what a lot of the top players are. So I'm already sort of past that sort of peak of my personal competition performance. So for me to go into competition against some of the players who are a lot younger, maybe 10 or 15 years younger than I am, even if they've got a lower grade, it's still quite a hard match for me because I can't compete with them physically. Now, that isn't to say that if I do the keiko with them, it's not like, it's very different. It's very different to doing the Shinai. This is why it's important to do the 3 different ones, right? So, because I can't keep up with them on a physical basis, yeah? So I have to not rely more, but I have to employ more seme and try to use the datotsu no kikai with the previous question better in order to be able to make valid strikes. Now, I've got the disadvantage from a physical point of view, and I'm only using myself as an example because I'm talking from personal experience, but I believe it's the same everywhere. I might have a physical disadvantage, especially from from my age, but I've got the advantage of experience and grade. So I have a better knowledge of things like an understanding of things like datotsu no kikai and stuff like that. Now, I'm on the tail end of that. So I'm at the point now where if I was to sort of go to tournaments with younger competitors, I am sort of at the point where I'm feeling, well, I could probably still do it, probably still do all right. Am I going to consistently win? Am I going to be realistically looking at a definite, medal or something like that? Probably not. It's probably harder than it was before, but I'll be able to probably go and maybe win a couple of matches or something like that. Now, obviously, that's going to keep going down as they get older. And that's why you don't see 8th dans in the All Japan Championships, right? Because once they get to that sort of age, you've got to be 46, right, to be in the All Japan Championships. Sorry, to be 8th dan. You're going to struggle with the players that are coming up that are like 21, 22. because even it's the way Shiai Kendo works, which is why it's important, is that you can't just win it with sene. You can't just win it with high level Kendo. You have to be able to compete with your opponent in every aspect. That's why it's so important, because you can't just rely on one aspect of your Kendo. And that's why you see the 8th Dan tournaments are very different to the high school tournaments as well, right? So it's a natural progression. I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. And it doesn't mean that, like, okay, well, that guy might be 8th Dan, but you can't beat that guy who's 4th Dan in the Shiai. So that means that the guy in his 4th Dan is better. It doesn't mean that at all. At all. And even the, especially you go, like, talking about Japanese players, like top level players, they don't think like that either. You know, these young kids that are winning the All Japans recently, like they're like 21 or 22 or something. None of them, I don't think, and now I've never spoken to them, but I don't think that they're like, oh yeah, that Hachidan's rubbish or anything like that. I could batter that guy. They don't think like that. It's wrong to think like that. Yeah. And if you saw them doing Keiko, then actually, if they're just trying to beat up the older 8th Dan, then they're not going to get anything out of it, and nobody's going to gain anything. And it doesn't really work like that either. So it's hard to properly articulate, but I hope it's made some sense there anyway, and sort of answered the question a bit. But it is the case that, you know, you can't just rely on things like your seme, your experience in your higher level graded Kendo in Shiai. It needs more than that. It needs that as well, though. And that's why the best players in the world, in my opinion, are all like 5th Dan, 6th Dan, and some of them 7th Dan. Like, you watch 7th Dan championships, it's great. It's great. I love it, because they're all really high level Kendo, but they're still like, you know, like 42, 43 or something like that. So it's still quite full on, especially if it's full of like coppers that are all doing Kendo all the time, so they're dead fit as well. So okay, Handy, a question about Shinai. Does the bamboo species affect its properties such as longevity or feedback? And what is meant by select cuts of bamboo for premium Shinai? Does that mean taking the bamboo from the bottom versus the top of the bamboo plant? Thanks. Okay, so let's do that in back to front. The select cuts, it's, let's be honest, it's kind of slightly sales talk, but it's also, what it means is that we, you know, I think we use that language on our website. Just means that we're not just picking up any old bits of bamboo and throwing them together in a Shinai. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's from a specific part of the bamboo plant. We tend to make Shinai from the same plant. So the same piece, the same bamboo plant will make not one Shinai, but the pieces will come from the same one. Now, that's not to be confused. Sometimes people do confuse that. That doesn't mean that the fushi, the nodes, always perfectly line up, because the rings on the bamboo itself aren't always perfectly straight, and it doesn't mean that the pieces are cut from the piece next to it. So there can be a little bit of inconsistency there. And yeah, because one of those makes like loads of different, not loads, but you get lots of take out of one bamboo plant. So that's that. In terms of the species, so the main two species of bamboo that's used in Shinai are keichiku, which is originally a Taiwanese species of bamboo, and madake, or matake as some people pronounce it. It's the same thing. And it means that is originally a Japanese species of bamboo. Now, they are different. Is one better than the other? Not necessarily. Now, for years and years, madake was pushed as the premium or the better option, because it was more expensive, especially if the madake was grown in Japan. But also it wasn't grown as frequently, because it wasn't like as popular. Is popular the right word? It wasn't everywhere, because in Asia they eat the bamboo shoots as well. takenoko it's called, and apparently the takenoko of the madake species is much more bitter than the one of keichiku, so it's not originally a widespread species of bamboo. So they tended to be more expensive, and obviously people, like, it's a lot like the tighter stitching on the boga, or more expensive equals better, not necessarily. Now, obviously some boga companies will push that madake is better because it's more expensive, because they want you to spend more money on it. It's not always the case. Now, there's also different types of madake as well. Some are more flexible than others. I tend to use, now, we at KendoStar, we have both types of the keichiku and madake, but I am quite selective over the type of madake that I'll use in the Shinai. Some madake is very rigid, very sort of stiff, and I don't think that's good for the Shinai. In my experience, those Shinai tend to break sooner, and I'm not talking just my experience of using them. I'm talking as someone that's worked in this industry for a long time. The most Shinai that tend to break earliest are those ones that are made from the very hard madake, very stiff madake. So personally, I tend to favour keichiku Shinai, but the madake that we're using at the moment as well, I'm very fond of because it does have a much more flexible property to it. So yeah, what traditionally, if we talk things traditionally, keichiku is more flexible and madake is more rigid. So yeah, they're the difference in terms of the properties. In my experience, like I say, the more rigid they are, they tend to break sooner. So yeah, that's that. But like I say, if you go on KendoStar, the madake ones we have, they're pretty flexible considering the madake Shinai, and I think they're at a good point, they're a good balance for durability as well. So we tend to use keichiku for like shiai type, jisen gata dobari type Shinai, because you've got that sort of flexible feedback which shiai players tend to prefer. And we'll use madake more for like your practice type Shinai or your higher grade Shinai, like your koto style Shinai. But again, we'll still keep it where we can leave them cut quite thick, is what I'm saying. Because when it's cut quite thick, madake will tend to like splinter rather than just snap. If it's got that flexibility. So on things like the Nichirin-to, for example, which is a koto gata, that's a madake Shinai, it's pretty decent. And even any of the Shinai, we've got the more expensive ones like the Kiyomasa. It's a really beautiful Shinai. That's sort of in between a dobari and a koto gata, I guess, but with very beautiful madake used on it. But again, we've kept a bit of that flexibility in it because we've chosen this type of madake that's a little bit more flexible, so you can hopefully get a little bit more usage out of it. Shinai always consumable though, you never know when they're going to go. Right, last one. Handy Sensei, is it more common to have both first and last name embroidered on the gi and hakama, or just the first name? Thanks. Okay, that's a good question. So I'd say actually just the first name is probably the least common. On the Kendo gi, you would just have one name, so it could be your first name, or in Japan, obviously, it's more often your surname, but the Japanese use the surname as their first name. If that makes sense. So their surname goes in front and their given name goes after that. So the standard practice would either be to just have your family name and then your given name you could have on your hakama as well if you wanted to. I mean, some people like in Japan would have both as well, but it's a lot easier in Japanese if you have a Japanese name to write it on the Kendo. So you've only got like this much space, right? So like the Japanese names are written with kanji, so it could just be 3 or 4 characters to write it. But Western names, like my name, it's usually written in katakana, so it has to be. It's much longer. So either it has to go very small to get it all on there, or not. So or just pick one of the names. So my advice would be either go with just your family name on the kendogi, and on the hakama, then I think it's fine to have both. Or if you just wanted one, it would be your family name. Okay, that's it. That's all the questions. Quite a short one today. We had a big one last week. So thank you for joining me today. Thank you for putting up with the new studio lighting and all this. I know I keep kind of looking off camera because I've got another screen up there checking that everything's in focus and all that. Things will improve as we go forward. I will keep working on making things better. I'll start bringing you more content as well. Now I've got a proper space I can do this without disturbing everything at KendoStar. And yeah, thanks for joining me. Like, share, subscribe, shop at KendoStar. See you next time. Bye-bye.